Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Backlit SEG webinar presented by the Fabric Graphics Association. I am Valerie Kushna with Fabric Images and Chair of the Fabric Graphics Association Advisory Board within IFAI. I will be moderating the webinar today. This webinar will provide details on fabric types used with backlit silicone edge graphics or SEGs, fabric characteristics, and how they interact with graphic applications. We will also be covering the best practices and tips for success with SEGs. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that a PDF of the presentation can be downloaded from the handouts portion of the GoToWebinar panel. Most of you will have it on the right-hand side. And also it will be emailed after the presentation. Additionally, a recording of the webinar will be available on the Fabric Graphics Association website for all IFAI members. Note that a survey will pop up automatically after the webinar, and you'll have 2 chances to complete it, here or in our follow-up email. Our presenter today is Mike Compton, Product Marketing Manager of Top Value Fabrics. Mike has been in the industry for over 18 years and is proficient in digital printing on textiles with experience in print media, printers, inks, software, and finishing equipment. We will be placing attendees on mute throughout the webinar to minimize background noise. If you have any questions, please type them in the questions function of the GoToWebinar toolbox, also on your right-hand side, and I will moderate the questions. So before we begin, we want to give Mike a little background of who's attending. So I'm going to go ahead and do a poll. If all of you can take a look, let's go ahead and launch this. Okay, do you currently produce backlit graphics? If everybody can just vote, yes or no? Okay, we'll give it another second. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's go ahead. Oops. Okay, we're gonna go and close the poll. Okay, so Mike, it looks like we have a lot of people that are looking maybe to get into it, but are not currently doing it. So this will be a great webinar. Okay, so without further ado, let's begin. Welcome, Mike.
Okay, thank you, Valerie. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for attending the webinar today. I know your schedules are probably busy, and if you're looking at doing backlit fabric, this should be very beneficial to you. One of the things I'd like to point out, if you have questions as we're going through the various slides and details, please feel free to type the question in, and Valerie will stop and ask the question right then. And you can also do it at the end of the webinar for question and answer period. But if you have a question right as we're talking about a specific subject, please type it in, and Valerie can stop me and I can answer it right there while it's fresh in your mind and fresh in my mind. So thank you again for attending. And thank you, IFAI and Fabric Graphics Association for inviting me here today. As Valerie mentioned, I have 18 years of experience in digital printing on textile, and this kind of goes back to, while 18 years may not seem like a long time in textile, I started basically back when there were no fabrics prepared for printers, and there were no really printers set up for printing textiles and inks and things of that nature. So we've seen this develop over the last 18 to 20 years in a huge and growing business. I've got global experience, worked around the world, North America, South America, and Europe. Spent 10 years at DuPont, both developing and selling inks, printers, and working with software and heat presses and pretty much everything you can imagine. And the key thing for backlit fabric, as well as any fabric in digitally printing, is really having hands-on experience and being able to trust your print media vendor as a full solution provider. So anyway, that's the way that we work. That's the way that I work. Just as a note, I'm Secretary of the SGI Sustainability, Health, Safety, and Personnel Committee, editorial advisor for the SGI Journal, and a very proud member of the IFAI Fabric Graphics Association board. I also spend a lot of time writing articles in the various trade publications, and a lot right now apply to backlit fabrics. So with that being said, we'll get starting on the presentation. First, I'm going to cover what the presentation is going to cover. We've already basically done the introduction. We'll talk about selection of backlit fabrics, as well as applications for backlit fabrics, profiling and printing backlit fabrics, which is very critical, as well as finishing equipment and processes. We'll also discuss adhering the silicone edge graphics to the frame systems and installation. This is another key point. We'll also talk about best practices for shipping and handling the backlit fabrics. And then again, we'll go through a question and answer period. And as I said, please feel free to type in a question as we go through the slides, and Valerie will stop me and ask the question. And I like it when you do this as an attendee, because this makes it very interactive, and that way you're just not listening to me and looking at me flip through slides. So appreciate all of your input that you have as we go through this. So the first thing we'll talk about is selecting backlit fabrics. There are many fabrics to choose from. We'll talk about using knits versus woven fabrics, coated versus uncoated fabrics, fabric weight and construction, uniform dimensional stretch, and variations in white point and consistency in the fabrics themselves. First of all, I'll let you know that I'm a big fan of knitted backlit fabrics, especially coated. There are many fabrics out in the industry. Some are woven, some are knit, some are coated, some are uncoated. And it's critical to understand what the differences are. Knitted fabrics are much easily utilized in basically all frame systems, including curved structures, which you'll see a photo of later on. And that's due to their stretch capabilities. You want to ensure dimensional stability so the stretch is uniform when you're fitting it into a frame from side to side and top to bottom, because what you want to eliminate is any bunching along the edges, corners, or sagging in the middle of the graphic itself. Dense knit fabrics provide better opacity for backlit LED light diffusion, and we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into coatings and things of that nature. Knit fabrics are a lock stitch construction, which prevents tearing of the finished graphic. You want the graphic to fit tightly in the frame, but you don't want to pull on it to the point where you actually tear the SEG edge or tear the fabric itself, because if you're in a crunch time for whether it's in-store retail or trade show, you're not going to have the opportunity to reprint and redo the graphic. One of the nice advantages about knit fabrics is that they can be cold cut as opposed to being hot knifed due to the lock stitch construction. And they're very flexible for sewing on silicone edge or teeter. And you'll hear that word teeter. It's commonly used, but basically it's the same thing as the silicone edge itself. Woven fabrics, a little bit different. Woven fabrics can certainly be used for backlit applications. At Top Value Fabrics, we have both. And it depends on the density of the weave, opacity, and the stretch capability. Woven fabrics are typically best suited for flat display frame structures due to less stretch capability for curved frame displays. So what that means is, when I say flat, you're looking at just basically a backlit type wall. Woven fabrics also are different from knit fabrics in the fact that they're loose weave construction, and they don't have that locking stitch on the end. So what will happen is, it's easy to see a woven fabric. If you look at it, you'll see threads coming off the sides because they're not locked in. So basically, at this point, you're required to use hot knife or laser cutting to seal the edges to eliminate the frame. Depending on the weave, woven fabrics can also reveal hot spots from LED lights, particularly when the finished image is viewed at an angle. So if you're looking straight onto a woven backlit fabric, typically it's probably going to look pretty decent, depending on how it was printed and finished and so on. but because of the way they're woven, if you view it at an angle, chances are that you're going to see the LED lights that illuminate the fabric behind it, which are what hot spots are. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on that as we move along, because if you're new to backlit fabric, you're going to hear terms like hot spots and pinholes, which I'll make sure I explain so I don't lose anybody as we go along. Both knit and woven fabrics range in weight across the industry from 4 ounces a square yard to 11 ounces a square yard. And obviously, the lighter weight fabrics are usually less expensive. But the other end of that is they're probably not going to provide as good of graphics as you want for your customer, your end user, especially as a print service provider. So I'll talk a little bit about coated versus uncoated backlit fabrics. Premium backlit fabrics have a print receptive diffuser coating. And what that does, it goes back to what I was talking about with the LED lights. When you have a backlit fabric, especially that's going into high-end retail or any retail or trade shows, it's important that you have that diffuser coating on there. If you look at the notes here, you're going to see that as I go forward, back in the past, it was so evident that you could see the lights based on the fabrics, and fabrics have evolved and continue to evolve. People would actually have to use a type of diffuser panel, quite commonly like an opaque type plexiglass panel, which adds cost to the overall print. So typically a fabric's going to have up to 2 to 3 coatings, and not just the diffuser coating, which diffuses the LED light so it's even across the graphic as you see in the photo here on the screen, but they'll also have FR coatings for fire retardants, which is very critical. In most cases, that's actually required by the fire marshal, especially if you're in a large trade show. The coatings also eliminate the hot spots from LED lights compared to an uncoated fabric. And again, a hot spot is anywhere that you're going to be able to see the LED light actually shine through the graphic, which is going to take away from the overall brilliance of the graphics itself. It also eliminates pinholes. This is where light from an open weave or an open knit can show through the fabric and distract from the image quality. And it's important to point out that when a fabric is being manufactured, woven knit, it's used with needles, and needles will leave small holes in the fabric itself, which in most cases for a graphic doesn't make a tremendous amount of difference. But for a backlit graphic, you'll be able to see basically, especially in dark areas like black, little pinholes where the LED light shining through, and it'll almost give it a starry night type of appearance, which will detract from the graphic. So this is where coatings are very important, and we're going to talk about coating later on, especially with handling and finishing the graphics as you go through and complete the finished job for your customers. Again, I talked a little bit about this. What do coatings provide? Having the coating, as I mentioned previously, eliminates the need for an additional diffuser panel behind a finished graphic. Coated fabrics can typically be printed with a variety of inks. And this depends on the manufacturer, depends on your print media provider. In our case, our coated fabrics can be printed with direct dye sublimation, which you'll also hear referred to as direct disperse ink, heat transfer dye sublimation, latex inks, and UV inks. Printing and handling coated backlit fabrics requires a lot of attention to detail and will provide brilliant backlit graphics when finished. Now we'll talk about applications for backlit fabrics, and I will tell you this continues to expand. And also, I'll point out again, there are many different backlit fabrics for the type of ink you're using. If you are not a dye sublimation printer or print with direct dye sublimation or disperse, you can use latex ink. You can use UV ink. It's just important to work with your print media vendor to understand the characteristics. In this particular photo, you'll see a sign from HP, which was printed with HP latex ink. And this particular fabric is coated specifically for these inks. So the inks adhere and are scratch resistant and things of that nature. And I'm cautious when I say scratch resistant because it's primarily scuff resistant. Any coated fabric or any fabric for that nature, you don't want to scratch with a sharp object because you're actually disturbing the fiber on the surface and can create defects. What we typically refer to as crock fastness, which means rubbing, which can occur when you handle the fabric or sew the silicone edge on. So applications, trade show booths and exhibits. This is huge, and I'm going to show you some photographs following up this slide here. In-store retail, point of purchase, storefront displays, airport and transportation marketing, ceiling displays and interior decor, curved and architectural structures, automobile dealerships, museum displays, sports venues, and the use of backlit fabrics and applications just continues to grow dramatically. So let's take a look at a few applications. And you'll notice in the corner, many of the applications you're going to see are courtesy of Matrix Frame. Matrix Frame was actually historically the originator of manufacturing backlit frames, which started in Holland in around 2000. And this is spread throughout several manufacturers now. And it's just important to understand the characteristics of the frame and the lighting. In this particular slide that you see here, this is a trade show setup. And you'll see freestanding walls. You also see arches. Typically, when we do a trade show, the grand entrance, as we like to call it, is a very large arch with graphics printed on both sides of the legs as well as the top and the bottom. So there are a lot of things that you can do with frames, whether it's a trade show or any other application that can really set you apart from anyone else who's printing backlit graphics. In-store retail. In-store retail has become a very popular use for backlit graphics. You'll see this one obviously in the upper right-hand corner is a Levi's retail store. You'll also find these, and you can walk into pretty much any Apple iStore in the country, and you will see a backlit graphic that's fabric. The same for H&M department stores. Like I said, Nike, Levi's, also Nike, Under Armour. Valerie brought up a good point yesterday. Even stores such as Aldi use these. You'll also find these in shoe stores. Mm-hmm. Pretty much any type of retail location, these have become extremely popular. This is another small photo here. Belk is a major department store chain in the Southeast where I'm located. And one of the nice things about backlit graphics, especially in retail, is that you can easily change out the graphic, whether it's seasonal or if it's for a promotion. Let's say it's a holiday promotion or it's coming up. Hopefully, wherever you are, it's getting warmer, and you're going to start seeing the swimwear and cruise wear and all the other type stuff. And when it gets to wintertime, you'll see the winter apparel. So this is one of the beauties of printing and using backlit fabric, is that it's a nonstop recurring use and business for print service providers. Storefront has become very popular, especially when you're in whether it's an outdoor mall, a freestanding store. These really grab the attention of people walking down the sidewalk or walking through a mall, and really catch attention and invite customers in. So again, this has become a very popular use as well. Major sports arenas. in case you can't tell, I'm located in Charlotte, so you'll see a few Charlotte-oriented photographs. This is the Spectrum Arena where the Charlotte Hornets play, as well as major concerts and the hockey team here, pretty much everything. So these are widely used. I've even seen these in backdrops for presidential, whether it's debates, discussions, or interviews. So again, just a lot. These are used in an NCAA tournament. You will see backlit graphics coming up. It is March Madness, so as we head into the tournament starting shortly, you'll see backlit graphics used there as well. The same with NFL stadiums. Again, the NBA, which is shown here, and even the PGA, professional golf. Even though a lot of times it's in, well, obviously it's in outdoor events because it's a golf course, but in the Ryder Cup, which was held in Minneapolis a year and a half ago, there were several backlit frames, many of them photographic as a tribute to Arnold Palmer, very full-size graphics. So the use of backlit graphics just continues to expand. Well, this is one I'll take a little bit of time on. Very important. Airport and transportation marketing. This business is absolutely exploding. If you travel through any major airport at this point, you will notice a tremendous amount of backlit graphics. Just in the last month to 2 months, I've been at O'Hare International Airport, right down the street from Valerie. The Milwaukee Airport, Dallas, Atlanta. Every single one of these airports has a tremendous amount of both backlit and non-lit SEG fabric frames for every type of marketing, whether it's travel destinations. You will see companies like Rolex, American Express, pretty much every major brand name who applies to travel or almost anything else where you're visiting is using backlit graphics. So this is an area to really pay attention to. This one, retail, trade shows are some of the largest users of backlit fabric. And again, it's very important because this is a great recurring business. Once you have the frames in, or someone has the frames in, if you have these accounts and can print and provide brilliant graphics, you have a continued revenue stream.
Mike,
Automobile.
can I interject? Yes. Oh, can I interject really quick with a quick question?
Yep.
Like the previous slide, any concerns about UV durability or any tips on how to keep those colors vibrant?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one of the things that I was going to talk about coming up here, especially where things are used in museums, what's important to understand with the durability is, as an example, inks like latex and UV, very high durability when it comes to light fastness. And when you're using a dye sublimation ink, you want to make sure, if possible, that you use a high density ink. But the LED lights themselves can have a great effect on how long a graphic will last. I happened to be at a conference recently with a world-renowned expert by the name of Henry Wilhelm. And he has made a career out of studying how various light will cause, whether it's a photograph, a painting, and now backlit fabrics, on how the fabric might fade based on the type of LED. LED lights can be extremely bright, and they can cause backlit graphics to fade. So you want to pay particular attention to that and the type of lights that you're using or that your frame provider is using. There continues to be great growth and knowledge and experience with that. Henry let me know that there's new backlit LEDs that are called purple pump LED lights. And these lights actually both add to the full color spectrum as well as greatly reduce the fading that might occur with the fabric. And also, I'll point out here too, Valerie, like I said, it's a good question. Having a very properly coated fabric is going to be very important in how the ink lasts. Let's just say you use a very inexpensive woven fabric that's heat transferred. The chances are that it's going to fade a lot quicker than a premium coated knit fabric. So hopefully that answers the question. And again, if anyone who's listening in right now wants more information, at the end of this presentation, you'll see my contact information, and I will happily field questions, talk to you on the phone. You can contact me by email, however you like. So we'll move on to automobile dealerships. This has become very common, especially as models change from year to year. We have very large clients, including Triumph Motorcycles, who use backlit graphics and SEG in every single one of their showrooms across North America. So again, this is another growth area. And one thing I mentioned, and obviously you'll see my Charlotte reference again with the NASCAR Hall of Fame being located close by. What you see here is basically we'll call it a reincarnation or restructure of a racetrack with actual race cars on the track. When you see the crowd behind, that is actually a very long curved backlit graphic. So the applications are just tremendous and continue to grow. And this is what I was talking about too. When we talked about the fading and where the LED lights can play a part in that. It's like anything else. You have good, better, best, and you want to make sure that you're using LED lights that provide nice, even lighting, but are not so hot and put off so much light that they'll cause the graphics to fade. Here you see something that's both unique and growing, which is ceiling panels for interior decor. And this particular photo is a ceiling photo of a vineyard, and people find these very attractive, and it really adds to the overall feel from the inside of a structure or building, and can really set the end user apart. And this is what I was referring to, where you see backlit fabric commonly being used in architectural structures now. The entire architectural market and design market is getting really in tune with using printed fabrics in general. It could be even on cubicle walls. But in this case, you'll see a frame that is curved with a very nice photographic print. And this is where using a knit fabric that has the capability of stretch comes in very handy, very nice, and will provide a brilliant graphic. It's interesting to see over the last year or so how many architects and design firms actually take a look at our website for these type of items. So again, the market for these types of graphics just continues to explode. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what you don't want to do. Once you've selected a backlit fabric for your application, it's time to print and understand the best practices and keys for success. And again, whoever you're dealing with, whether it's your frame manufacturer, your print media provider, you want to make sure that you can lean on them to help you work through the entire solution: printers, inks, heat presses, pretty much everything. There are a lot of people who are more than willing to send you a roll of fabric for you to test, but every fabric is different. As you'll see right here, I say all fabrics are not created equal, and the proper way to profile these has become a bit of a lost standard practice. If you go back 8 to 10 years ago, fabrics, every single fabric was profiled before it was printed. And that does a lot for you. First of all, you want to ensure that as you're obtaining your fabrics, that the fabrics stay consistent. So that means the white point doesn't change, they're rolled consistently, basically everything stays the same. A few notes on profiling. Again, going back a few years ago, there were two types of profiles commonly used: CMYK and also RGB. CMYK is your typical four-color ink set: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And then RGB is a great way to hit very brilliant spot colors. People often take a look at our graphics and say, "Wow, did you use fluorescent inks?" And the answer is no. It's with the RGB profile and setting up an actual print graphic to be an RGB file or to convert it to an RGB file. There, especially as you work with a coded backlit graphic, this becomes very critical in achieving the rich blacks, navy blues, and the extremely bright red, orange, yellow type of colors. So when I work with folks on profiling, we make sure that we use RGB on coated fabrics. It's become kind of the standard in the industry where everybody works on a deadline, and you have folks out in the back room printing who will pull fabric A off the shelf, load it on the printer, and hit basically a generic CMYK profile. Now, this will work extremely well for a large amount of polyester fabrics on the market, but when it comes to coated backlit, it's a totally different animal. And printing, you can print direct. The difference there is when you're printing direct, the dye is actually wrapping around the fiber itself. And with a heat transfer print, again, you're basically printing the surface. So it's really important to understand how each fabric's going to react, and then it's profiled properly. And it's also important to understand the entire system, and we'll talk about that a little bit. You also need to understand the type of backlit frame and lighting that's being utilized to illuminate the finished graphics. For our choice is typically to use perimeter lighting with the diffused knit fabric. That lighting is going to spread evenly across the entire graphic. You will sometimes see frames with LED lights that run through the middle, and when you do that, you're standing in a lot better chance of seeing those hot spots right in the middle of the graphic. So again, we prefer a good quality backlit frame with perimeter lighting for the coated fabrics, because again, it will spread out the light and the illumination very evenly. And one little note, and not to go into too much detail, but LED lights actually kind of have a break-in period. So when you first turn them on, they'll be a little bit brighter, and then they'll settle in. So actually, with more use, they end up actually lighting up the graphic more evenly. And I talked about the differences between white point from fabric to fabric and batch to batch. You want to ensure that who's ever providing your fabric, that it stays consistent, especially the white point, because what that does, it eliminates you from reprofiling. If you have a bright white fabric with an optical brightener, that's great. What you want to make sure is that you don't have off-white, cream white, yellow white, and things of that nature. So really lean on your print media suppliers to make sure that your fabrics are consistent. This photograph that you see on this slide is kind of an example of what not to do, and where you see all the red marks, that's just because we blurred it out to protect the person providing this fabric. And you'll see here, if you look along the edges, you'll notice the LED lights where the hot spots are shining through. You'll also see toward the bottom, especially, sagging in the print where it's not stretched properly, probably a little bit too much fabric, probably could have been tightened up quite a bit in the cut and sew and finishing of the fabric itself. And like I said, printed images can vary significantly on coated versus uncoated fabrics. And this next bullet point here, the second one, print systems, inks, and finishing equipment need to be managed to work fluidly together for premium backlit graphics. This is very important because regardless of what printer, ink set, heat press, software you have, you need to understand how those all work together. What we've learned in our hands-on experience with coated backlit fabrics, they are much different than an uncoated, let's say, lightweight woven or knit itself. So typically what you want to do when you profile this type of fabric is you want to use what we call a transmissive profiling equipment, as an example, Barbieri. With transmissive, what that means is instead of just reading the color blocks when you're setting your profile, there's a transmissive light that shines through the fabric, which is actually going to give you the real result of what the color is going to look like when it's illuminated in a backlit frame. You also need to understand and work with the experts on both printing and heat pressing and the finishing. And I'll bring up here, with a coated backlit fabric, when you print the ink, whether it's direct dye sublimation, disperse, or heat transfer, these particular fabrics were actually run at 400 degrees Fahrenheit on the heat press with a 55-second dwell time, which is a much higher temperature and a much longer dwell time than you would use on a typical polyester print. And the reason is because you're really, by doing this, driving the ink into the fiber. And the longer that you push this and put the pressure on the heat press on the belt, it expands more dye sites in the polyester fiber themselves for the ink to saturate into, which is going to give you a brilliant color. This particular graphic that you're looking at here is actually one of our trade show graphics that we used at SGIA in New Orleans in October. These will be the same graphics that we'll use next week at ISA in Orlando, and you can see the richness and brilliant color. And I can tell you, for our coated backlit fabrics, as I said, we will run them all right at 400 degrees Fahrenheit with the 55-second dwell time. Now, some lighter weight fabrics that aren't coated, you wouldn't do that with, because you have to run the chance of actually turning the fabric a little bit brown or off color. But in this case, it makes a tremendous amount of difference with your ink saturation and the finished product. So fabrics can perform better and provide superior graphics when the time's taken to really profile your entire print system as a unit. You can even have two exact same printers with the exact same ink side by side, and the print results can be different. A lot of customers will typically assign one printer that they've profiled carefully if they have multiple units, and typically lean on that printer because they know what the results are going to be with the ink that they're using. The other thing that I would highly recommend, as you see in this photo, is using a proofing frame for backlit graphics. Once you've printed the graphic, before you ship it to a customer, you want to make sure it's exactly the way it's supposed to look. And this is a great way of doing it. This happens to be a 10-foot wide by 8-foot high frame. And if you're doing a 20-foot long graphic wall, you just simply slide it over and you're proofing it to make sure that the print ends up absolutely perfect. Now we'll get into sewing silicone edge on backlit graphics. This particular photo here, you see a gentleman hand sewing. This is a Brother sewing machine with a SEG feed, which is the roll that you see at the top, the silicone edge. And as I mentioned, when possible, it's always best to have the backlit frame in-house while you're preparing to apply the silicone edge to fit into the frame, because that way you're going to ensure that graphic fits tightly. Once you deal with various frame systems, you're going to know where you need to be on the cut and sew end to make sure that the fabric fits in tightly. And as I said earlier, dimensional stretch is very important. You want fabric that typically stretches in length as much as width, so that you don't end up, like in the previous photo, with sags and bunching and edges that just don't fit properly. You want it to fit very tightly, but also leave yourself enough room to snap in the silicone edge on the side of the frame. So the other part is there's many fabrics out there that have too much stretch, and that makes it much harder to sew silicone edge, and also can create the same issues that we've talked about with sagging and bunching, and just making the end use graphic not look as great as it could be. Now, one thing I'll point out here, this particular print service provider, this gentleman here is the only person with the knowledge to sew silicone edge on. So you might imagine what kind of problems you can run into if you have one person and they are for some reason not there or not available, and you've got to get a job out, done, finished, and shipped to your customer. So number one, if you're sewing on silicone edge in this manner, which a lot of people still do, I would highly encourage you to cross-train other employees to make sure that you always have someone available to handle the finishing on your backlit printed graphics. So one of the things that we've talked about most of this, with or without the frame present at your facility, you want to make sure the measurements are precise, that are necessary to appropriately apply the silicone edge to the finished graphic. And this comes with a little bit of experience, quite honestly, in working with the fabric that you choose as your backlit. The fabric characteristics typically don't change if you're dealing with a good print media provider. And you'll see here on the left, this is actually a panel being rolled for shipment. And we'll get into that in a little more detail in just a bit. But you keep that graphic as perfectly flat as you can. And that eliminates any crease marks and scuffing that might occur as you're handling the fabric and preparing to ship it to the end user.
Mike, I have another question.
Yes.
If I can interject.
Yes.
You mentioned the scuff marks. Do you have any tips if there are scuff marks or imperfections that you see on site, even if you handle it this way? Do you have any recommendations or tips or tricks on that?
Yeah, absolutely, and good. Thank you for bringing that up, Valerie. One of the things that we've learned, and this is particularly occurs, as Valerie mentioned, the scuff marks. You'll see it, like if you look at that graphic on the right, where you see a lot of black, or if you have a graphic with solid colors. The scuff marks specifically appear with heat transfer printing on the coated fabrics, and just a little bit of difference between North America and Europe. Europe is about 90% direct disperse printing, as I mentioned, which is actually dyeing the entire fiber, where heat transfer again is printing the surface. So what can happen is, in handling the graphic, especially in a dark color or even a solid red, you'll see what appears to be a scuff mark. And what's happened there is, during handling, the fiber itself, the printed part of the fiber, has actually rolled over to expose the white part of the fiber, which was not printed. And one of the little tricks that we've learned over time is that you can take a small, round microfiber buffing pad. This would be similar to what you would use to apply wax to your car. And if you massage that fiber in a circular motion, both clockwise and counterclockwise, you can get that fiber to roll right back into place and cause what appears to be a serious defect in the print to just totally disappear. So that's just a little trick you can use, and it works extremely well, whether it's when you're proofing a graphic before shipping or even after the graphic's been installed. So just a little trick, and again, you need to make sure that you can rely on who's coaching you and teaching you to print backlit fabrics for these types of things. So thank you again, Valerie, for bringing that up. It's a lot of little tricks when you do some real hands-on work with backlit fabrics. So we'll talk about, you saw the gentleman hand sewing. There are several pieces of equipment on the market now that are highly automated. This particular one is the Matic Chronos. They have a couple different versions of this machine. These machines are highly automated, so you can basically take someone who has no sewing skill, like myself, and as a matter of fact, I probably couldn't even thread a needle. But these machines are so automated, and you can set them up whether you want to do a double stitch on a silicone edge or single stitch. And once you set the fabric in, it will automatically read the width, the length, and basically you press the foot pedal, and that thing is going to zip right through there. So you're saving, while you might have an initial expenditure on an automated piece of equipment like this, you're saving a tremendous amount of time in labor, and also eliminating a lot of issues that can occur when you're sewing on SEG onto backlit fabrics. And if you happen to visit any trade shows, you'll see this equipment widely spread. If you happen to be going to ISA in Orlando next week, you will see the same thing. You'll see these machines in operation, being used very effectively. And not to just point out one manufacturer, this is the Digitran that's offered by Miller Weldmaster, same type of setup. And with these machines, I'll point out there's a lot of different variations that you can get with the sewing equipment, the SEG feed, and automation depending on what you need to fit your workflow and provide the best finished graphics. This is another one. This is the Impulsa. Again, very similar to the ones you see. And if you're doing, you'll notice this table's quite a bit longer. You can, if you're doing very long backlit panels, these machines are all easily adapted with longer tables to make management of the graphics much easier, and also keep the graphics from wrinkling and creasing as the SEG is being sewn on. Now I'm going to get into best practices for shipping graphics. This has become a very hot topic in the backlit fabric market, because what everyone would like to do is simply fold up a graphic into a small square, put it in a FedEx package, and ship it out, which may be okay with some woven fabrics. But when you're dealing with a coated backlit fabric, it needs to be handled with care. Climate control is important. You want to make sure that if you're using a coated backlit fabric, that it's not too cold, it's not too hot. We have had customers who basically stored fabrics in containers out in the parking lot when it was below zero, and then try to print it. And what you'll see is fracturing actually in the coating that can occur. So you want to make sure that these fabrics are climate controlled both before printing, during printing, and after printing. Now, one of the things that's really evolving with the coated fabrics for backlit is that many of the manufacturers, including manufacturers that we specifically work with, are now knitting in a microfiber into the backlit fabric itself. So even though it's coated, it has that very nice soft feel. And when in the event that it does wrinkle, you're not going to see creases or defects in the fabric. When you snap it into a frame, wrinkles will disappear within literally seconds, if not a couple minutes. So you want to make sure that you handle the fabrics with care, and that's when you're loading the fabrics on. And even if you're carrying a graphic from the heat press to the sewing area, you just want to make sure that you don't wad it up in a ball and hard crease it. So again, as I said, whether the backlit fabric's a knit, woven, coated, or uncoated, the finished graphic should be handled with care. Once a folded backlit graphic is installed and illuminated, if you see creases, they are very hard to recover from, because what you've done is actually, as I said previously, fractured the coating on the print itself. So again, handle these with care. A coated and finished backlit graphic can exhibit hard crease lines, and that's if you hard fold it, as well as a fractured appearance, as I just said. So again, and I can't overstate it enough, you want to make sure that you carefully handle these fabrics, but also, because this is such a large market, the manufacturers are really paying close attention to eliminating these types of things. And if if you insist on folding a fabric, I highly recommend that you soft fold it. And I'm going to show you a photograph here of a couple ways to package and handle your graphics. And again, most print service providers, they want to be known and trusted by their clients for providing an ultimate backlit graphic at the highest quality. So the photograph you see here on the right is just a zoom in of the one we saw earlier, where you see obvious wrinkles and creases. These are the types of things you want to eliminate when that graphic gets to an end user, because they're going to turn around and they're going to tell you that they're not going to accept it, they're not going to pay for it, and they're going to ship it back to you. It happens on a daily basis. So what you want to avoid is the cost of reprint. It could cost a little bit more money to package and ship, but at the end of the day, you're actually saving money by approaching it the proper way. In this photograph here, the photograph on the right, you see our graphics, exactly how we roll them and ship them. The graphics are put on a table. This particular foam that you're looking at is a 1/4-inch U-line foam. It's very soft. It's very pliable. The graphics are tightly rolled in there, so there's no chance during shipping that you're going to end up with those hard crease lines. Now, with this same type of foam, you can actually soft fold the graphics where you have a curved edge instead of a hard crease. And if any one of you wants the information, the specific product number on this, please feel free to contact me. Again, my information will be on here on the last slide. What you see on the left is how we actually wrap the rolled graphics with the foam. Again, this is a very inexpensive U-line product. It basically looks like a small, this is about 6 to 8 inches wide type of film shrink wrap, and this just wraps around the rolled foam on the finished graphic. And the reason we do this is because it's very easy to peel this off. It's not like using a clear packaging tape where you're going to start ripping at the foam and tearing. So again, these are the little tricks that we learn with hands-on experience as this business continues to explode. Just like Valerie asked the question with the microfiber buffing pads, those things you can go to the automotive section at Walmart and they are very inexpensive. So these are just little tricks of the trade that we try to provide for everyone. So that pretty much wraps up the details of this presentation. Again, there's a lot of detail that I can go into based on your individual print systems, your heat presses, your software, profiling, everything. So please feel free to reach out to me, ask any questions after this. We've talked about selecting backlit fabrics, applications for backlit fabrics, profiling and printing, finishing and equipment and processes, sewing on the silicone edge, frame systems and installations, and best practices for shipping and handling backlit fabrics. Again, it's kind of a lot of information in a short period of time, and I typically will go out and work with print service providers. Best place to be is in the back room. That way you can solve problems. So again, as we move forward, if there are any questions that you have for me, please feel free to reach out to me. I will typically answer you immediately. We'll be at a trade show next week, but that doesn't mean that I won't respond. So you can call my cell phone number, you can text me, email me. The important thing is, as I said, and I've said it several times, is rely on your print media vendor or supplier for the details and helping you work through the entire process of printing backlit fabrics. So with that, if there are additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Well, thanks, Mike. Let's see, it looks like we have time for about one question.
Okay.
One of the ones that came across, is steaming ever recommended to remove wrinkles on site?
Okay, so with a lot of polyester fabrics, steaming works out quite well. I would not recommended. As a matter of fact, I would say please don't do it with a coated backlit fabric, whether it's coated or uncoated, because when you're using especially dye sublimation or direct dispersed ink, you can actually cause that ink to resublimate, which is one of the reasons you want to keep the fabric climate controlled. With as the least amount of humidity as possible, understanding that you do need the right amount of humidity to run your printers so you don't end up with print head issues. But using a steamer can actually cause defects in the fabric, where, again, the ink can either resublimate, you can leave water rings and spots and things of that nature. So the best solution is to properly handle the graphics, as we've illustrated, with rolling, wrapping, shipping, and again, having a great backlit fabric. Even if there are small wrinkles and things of that nature, once you snap them into the frame, those should easily disappear.
Excellent. Well, thank you. If there's any additional questions, again, feel free to reach out to Mike. I want to thank you all for attending the FGA Backlit SEG webinar. There will be a follow-up email with a copy of the presentation slides and a brief survey for you to share your thoughts on this webinar and ideas for future webinars. If you're interested in presenting a webinar or joining FGA, please contact Christine Girard, FGA's Division Supervisor. Thanks and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.